Thank you, Michael. We have 4 speakers, Heather Emberley, Michael Thiessen, Pat Lane, and Steve Lennon. Here's Heather.
Good morning, everyone. Everybody here and our Zoomers, and special welcome to our MP, Mike Morose, who joins us today. So welcome, everyone. And special thanks to Sharon Wickman for her input today. I, as Steve said, am 1/4 of the attendees from this church who bring you our perspectives on the Winnipeg Indigenous gathering, which was held recently at the Canadian Museum of Human Rights. We also do this service with the thought that this coming Tuesday, February 20, is World Justice Day. This church champions social justice and is an Accord signatory. By definition, an accord is an agreement. The Winnipeg Accord is a living document to guide our shared commitment to the journey of reconciliation and is rooted in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. This church has its own call to action, beginning with Treaty 1 land acknowledgement. This connotes land reparation, and for many, our involvement in social justice is a spiritual practice. I attended as a co-representative of Little Stars Playhouse, a preschool on Selkirk Avenue, and a past recipient of our Share the Plate. A teacher at Gordon Bell always says, healing begins with the children. This is the lens that I observed the day from. The very first line of the Accord states, developed by children gathered in harmony to visualize a future of Winnipeg. The very last line of the Accord says, reconciliation requires sustained public education and dialogue, including youth involvement. There are 12,000 children in care in Manitoba with Child and Family Services. 90% are Indigenous. Last year, 24 of the 25 of my beloved Little Stars volunteer engagement, 24 of the 25 were wards of CFS. If the Accord means agreement, I want to know what these children are agreeing to. While at the Human Rights Museum, I also helped Michael Thiessen at the Bear Clan Patrol and Community Helpers Unite display table. He was selected as one of 4 to be in the inner circle for the day. At his display, I got to meet many people concerned about the inaction or action taken on the 94 calls to action. I attribute my opportunity to be involved to Interim Minister Reverend Nicolene and her commitment to social justice. She is the reason Michael started patrolling in the North End, and the Bear Clan Board recently confirmed that Michael now is their longest serving volunteer. Not oldest, longest. Reflecting on my Covenant Group's theme last week of hope, I attempted to channel social justice, accordance, action, and the interconnected web with what I heard at the Accord. I heard Manitoba has the first homeless child, an 11-year-old girl, now living in a shelter in Brandon. I heard Chief Gordon Bluesky and Elder Geraldine Shingu say, there can be no reconciliation until we get our land back. I heard the presenters refer to all of us attendees as brothers and sisters. Powerful words. And I heard Johnny Thunder say, the personal is political. Now, whenever I hear a man quote Gloria Steinem, I really pay attention. Essentially, he was saying, make the cord a personal. It reminded me of the theme of my favorite show, Dead Dog Cafe. Stay calm, be brave, watch for the signs. That sign came in the form of a bench. That bench, outside the bay, across the street from the Winnipeg Art Gallery. And I took all of that stuff, and I said, there's my sign. That means that I witnessed on that bench often a young Indigenous man sitting there. I see him when I exit the Bay Parkade. He always smiles and waves. For privacy, I didn't take a picture of him, but just imagine this young man in most weather. He is homeless, spends a lot of time on that bench. Since my parking is free, please don't hate me, but my parking is free at the Bay, 24/7, free, because of the work I do. It is a perk to the job. I'm in no rush. I can leave and walk and go down Portage Avenue, walk to the U of W, walk anywhere, and my parking is always paid. One day, I decided to sit beside him, said hello, and said, is this seat taken? He's brilliant, and he's homeless. He has a friend who lets him couch surf when it's very cold. Otherwise, he's out there. We've had long conversations on that bench. It's a gift of friendship that I would not have imagined without the Indigenous Accord and our principle of the inherent worth and dignity of every human. He's a mess, a brilliant mess, and someone I had driven past many times. I invited him to be here today, but even raisin bread couldn't sway him. A great sense of humor. He said, but I have nothing to wear. It's true. He doesn't have much. But Michael and Michael's friend Carol are working on that. We've gotten to know each other. We are on a first nickname basis. He calls me Sweet Story, and I call him Benchmark, because not only of where we met, but the people who adopted him changed his name to Mark. He ran away at 14 from an adoption gone terribly wrong and never looked back. Many therapists say it's never too late to have a happy childhood, but he's not buying it. Benchmark says he's taking me to the Bay when it opens, so I'm taking him to the art gallery, which he looks at from across the street on his bench, but he's never been inside. He said even on free admission days, he doesn't think they'd let him in because of his street clothes. In the short time since the Indigenous Accord, I've been taking copious notes on what he shares, and it's clear to me he needs a really good listening to. He won't enter the Millennium Library, not out of fear, but of how the police drop off people in distress when they're discharged from hospital and how they're spoken to. Instead of the Millennium, he reads the Globe and Mail, and often a book a day, here at the Cornish Library. We've had some great laughs together. The director of our relative's place, Nadinaway, says, if you hear laughter, you know it's working. I can hardly wait to write about the lady in the Lexus incident for John Burstow's writing group. It's quite the story. She also exited the Bay Parkade and pulled up. And what happened afterwards, we're laughing about it, serious though it was. And I look forward to writing his story. And I'm hoping someday he'll come here and share that story. If healing begins with the children, it also begins with us. I have faith and hope that this church will grow its community outreach and commitment to social justice in redemption and in relationship, and make it personal, one bench at a time. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Michael Thiessen. As long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and rivers flow. On November 27, 2023, we attended the Winnipeg Indigenous Accord. This is what we were given. It's a copy, but it means a lot. And I'll be displaying it over in the corner there. And this was the pamphlet that we were given, which explains everyone that was there that had talked. This too I will display. There's a gathering to sign the accord and to share and declare our mutual resolve to reconciliation. I attended both as Bear Clan Patrol, an organization that patrols communities and provides items of need to those in need. And also Community Helpers Unite, driving the van that picks up food donations and delivers to church centers that provide hampers to community members. And I have also walked with the Sabe Peace Walkers, an Indigenous-led organization based on the traditional 7 secret teachings. Sabe represents honesty. Canada's history of interaction with First Nations and Métis is a troubling one. I would like to mention some quotes from John A. MacDonald. This is from a book called 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act. This I highly recommend. When the school is on the reserve, the child lives with his parents who are savages, and though he may learn to read and write, his habits and training mode of thought are Indian. I hate that word. He is simply a savage who can read and write. It has been strongly impressed upon myself as head of the department that Indian children should be withdrawn as much as possible from the parental influence, and the only way to do that would be to put them in central training industrial schools where they will acquire the habits and modes of thought of white man. He shall die, though every dog in Quebec bark in his favor. 1885, following execution of Louis Riel for treason. The third clause provides that celebrating the potlatch is a misdemeanor. This Indian festival is debauchery of the worst kind, and the departmental officers and all clergymen unite in affirming that it is absolutely necessary to put this practice down. Residential schools, the disregard of the rights of First Nations peoples and the Métis, and removing them from the lands that they occupy. This has led to poverty, homelessness, the lack of proper medical access, and disregard to the traditional ways of life. Actions are being taken to correct this. The Dinawimak, our relatives' place located at 190 Disraeli, is providing shelter and meals for over 150 individuals. There's also Salvation Army, Silo Mission, Union Gospel Mission, Main Street Project, and many more. They are stepping up to give a hand up. The ongoing search of unmarked graves on residential school grounds has prompted the saying, "They found us." These are all steps in reconciliation. This church's social justice action will be to host the premiere of a documentary on homelessness. The date is yet to be finalized, probably in April or May. We have the unique opportunity to assist those in need. In the warmer months, individuals set up tents by the bridge. On September 1st of 2021, I came upon a woman who had set up a tent in the backyard here, and her comment was, the churchyard made her feel safe. We were able to assist in getting the help she needs. A week ago, Saturday, while I was here, there was a woman that had set up a makeshift shelter on the wood deck by the garbage bins behind to sleep overnight. I talked with her to offer help. She was quite independent and did not need it. Sometimes all a person wants is to be seen and acknowledged that they are valued. Now, I'd also like to recommend reading this, A National Crime, in regards to residential schools. Winnipeg Bear Clan's work with reconciliation has allowed Kevin Walker, the executive director, and Angela Clausen, West Broadway patrol captain, to travel to Whitehorse to walk with Whitehorse's Moccasin Mobile Outreach to trade experiences. The call to action is a simple one. Just do it. Contact organizations that are already putting the boots to the ground and ask how to help. Please, the need is great. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Pat Lane. Many of you will remember that in 2016, Maclean's magazine ran a story proclaiming Winnipeg to be the most racist city in Canada. I thought that Mayor Brian Bowman reacted in a very appropriate manner. Rather than denying the racism that existed, he gathered approximately 30 community leaders, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, and they essentially said, yes, racism is a problem in Winnipeg, and we are working on it. The Winnipeg Indigenous Accord was one of the actions that was created. It is a commitment that the signatories, which can be businesses, organizations, or individuals, commit to take action on the 94 calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Report. This has since been widened to include taking action on the 231 calls for justice set forth in the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls ++ report, released on June 3rd, 2019. This is the report to address violence against First Nations, Inuit, and Métis women and girls, and those who are two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, and all other sexual orientations and genders. It involves not just making the commitment, but filing an annual accountability report that is made public, which is actually a lot of work. Good news for all of us. Steve has committed to work with the board in preparing the report due by our congregation this spring. There are currently 238 signatories. Mary Warmbrode very proudly signed on behalf of our congregation at the first meeting. A lovely picture of her doing so was cycled through during our day at the meeting of partners in November. Jenny Gerbasi, known to many of us here in her personal capacity, was one of the first to sign the accord. I haven't signed personally yet, but I intend to do so at the next signing event. I am chair of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, typed it wrong, committee at my law firm. And on behalf of my law firm, I got the honor of signing the accord, which we just did a couple of years ago. The equity, diversity, and inclusion work, particularly the work around reducing the reactivity to words such as decolonization and defund the police, is the most rewarding and challenging work I do at the firm. One of the books in my central EDI library at work is a book by Robin Wall Kimmerer, Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. The author is a scientist and professor who was also in the process of starting to reclaim her heritage as a member of the Potawatomi Nation. This book was recommended to me by my daughter, who said she found this book to be one of the most helpful pieces of information to find hope for the future. The passage below was also the one chosen by Cheryl Simmons of our Chalice group when we presented a service during the lockdown time of COVID. It presents a different worldview, and in my opinion, a great example of the importance of preserving diversity and opening our mind to different ways of being. Robin Kimmerer said, after looking at the Ojibwe dictionary gifted to her by her sister, "My eyes settled on a word, a verb, of course, to be a Saturday. Everybody knows it's a noun. I flipped more pages and all kind of things seem to be verbs. To be a hill, to be red, to be a long sandy stretch of beach. And then my finger rested on wigwama, to be a bay. Ridiculous. A bay is most definitely a person, place, or thing, a noun, and not a verb. And then I swear I heard the synapses firing. An electric current sizzled down my finger and practically scorched the page where that one word lay. In that moment, I could smell the water of the bay, watch it rock against the shore, and hear it sift onto the sand. A bay is a noun if water is dead. To be a bay holds the wonder between these shores, conversing with cedar roots and a flock of baby mergansers. To be a hill, to be a sandy beach, to be a Saturday, all are possible verbs in a world where everything is alive. Water, land, and even a day, the language for seeing the animacy of the world, the life that pulses through all things, through pines and nut hatches and mushrooms. I do believe our province is changing. My friends who come here from other places mention that although these are topics alive elsewhere, they do not hear as many references as here to the intersectionality of addiction, unhoused people, and the residential school legacy. I was so relieved that racism did not stop us from electing our Indigenous Premier of Manitoba. I was so worried it would. I'm also relieved that economic political expediency did not prevail over the decision on whether to approve the silica extraction under 2 aquifers just outside Winnipeg. I also see our province changing in my involvement with the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. In my opinion, it was a stuffy, very stuffy conservative organization that was committed to conserving the status quo. This may be unfair. I did not give it much attention because what minimal connection I had reinforced my view. I'm very happy to report that my experience is vastly different in recent times. I believe the EDI work being done is tremendous, and, for example, Clayton Thomas Mueller, the Indigenous climate activist and author of Life in the City of Dirty Water, was the featured speaker to the business community earlier this week. By the way, check out the mini documentary on CBC Gem. You can see his work on YouTube as well. I do not believe this would have happened before. I'm going to end with the last two sentences of my firm's land acknowledgement and email signature. And yes, I did write it. Winnipeg has the largest Indigenous population of any major city in Canada. We believe that this situates us to be what we should be, can be, and need to be, the center of positive change for Canada. Thank you.
What was to become one of the best days of my entire life began at 7:30 a.m. with a beautiful pipe ceremony with Elder May Louise Campbell, Elder Billy Thunderbird Shibler, and about 200 delegates, 4 of whom are members of this church. This was our introduction to the Winnipeg Indigenous Accord all-partner gathering at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights this past November 27th. Organized by Indigenous Strategy Alliance and the City of Winnipeg. Over the busy day, we heard inspiring speeches by many of Winnipeg's other dynamic leaders, including Chief Gordon Blue Sky, Chair of Treaty One Nation, Mayor Scott Gillingham, Cecil Thiessen, Manager of Indigenous Relations, and a keynote address by Dr. Marcia Anderson. Then Professor Dr. Nagan Sinclair moderated a 4-person panel discussion with Sandra Delaronde, Annie Chen, Bradley West, and Charlene Hollett. After a delicious lunch, everyone participated in round-table discussions with those seated at their round table, and all groups reported back some of their ideas and insights. In a heartwarming ceremony, 16 new partners signed the accord, including St. Boniface Hospital, Manitoba Opera, Clinic Community Health, Westminster Housing Society, and Chartered Professional Accountants of Manitoba. At the end of the day, we wandered over to the Indigenous Vendors Market to check out their creative works. I have a habit of writing down any gems of wisdom I encounter when I attend an event such as this, and there were many pearls. To start, Elder May Louise Campbell noted that we can change how we think about people. Mayor Gillingham advised, I would encourage all of us to work together. This is a time of reflection. I would focus on one word, respect. The MC, Cecil Thiessen, cautioned that signing on and getting a photo with the mayor that you can put up in the workplace, that's wink and wave reconciliation. That's not why we are here today. We are committed to the path of reconciliation, and we will walk the road together. From the panel of speakers, we heard these comments from Sandra Delaronde. We in Winnipeg have the largest Indigenous population in Canada. We can all move together to create transformative change. How can we make Winnipeg feel like home for all of us? Charlene Hollett. We need to approach listening with humility. It's going to be hard work. We have to be honest. We have to be vulnerable. Bradley West. You have to be accountable for your own personal racism. We are a product of a racist system. We have to acknowledge that. And from Annie Chen, who is benefiting? Keynote speaker Dr. Marsha Anderson addressed the participants with, "We are in the process of unlearning and undoing systemic white supremacy and anti-Indigenous racism. Think about what you can do as a non-Indigenous person. What systemically stands in the way? How does white supremacy factor in? This is hard and painful work to do. I would encourage you to look at your own personal resistance to change." I want to talk briefly about the process of change. Change happens initially by individuals taking a few brave steps forward, then a few more. Then others do the same. We may not notice the increments of change until finally the small steps taken by many reach a tipping point, and then you realize that we have become different in our outlook. Just a few decades ago, it was acceptable to smoke in restaurants and in the workplace. It used to be acceptable to wear strong aftershave and perfume indoors. It used to be normal to construct commercial and public buildings with no access ramps. And it used to be common that people would drink and drive. But massive change in thought and habit, in rule and practice, has happened with all of these. And these changes happened because people were brave enough to take a few steps forward and to risk being uncomfortable. So as a signatory to the Winnipeg Indigenous Accord several years ago, what can we of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Winnipeg say have been our expressions of support for Indigenous people and for reconciliation? Here are some directions we have taken. 1, for a few years now, every church service here has started with a land acknowledgement. And it took us a year and a half to get the wording right, because I know Unitarians would question everything, so I wanted to have it very clear. And I think we did okay on that. 2, a number of our members volunteer each week for the Harvest Food Bank, whereby 15 to 20% of the clients are Indigenous. 3, some of our church people have been active with Meet Me at the Bell Tower to discuss issues in the community. 4, several members have been involved with Bear Clan, and on 2 occasions, Bear Clan representatives delivered sermons during the church services. 5, over the past few years, from time to time, our church's Share the Plate partners during the offering have been Bear Clan and North Point Douglas Women's Center. In the winter of 2023, once a week over 13 weeks, 32 members of this congregation and friends took part in learning and processing the University of Alberta's Indigenous Canada course. Participants would watch each 2-hour session online at home on their own time, then meet Wednesday evenings at the church to discuss and process in small groups. 7, several church members rallied at the legislative grounds last September 30th, wearing orange shirts in support of concerns about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited persons. 8, the church will be receiving a subscription to Say magazine. There's some of them there on the easels at the far corner you can have a look at. A fabulous contemporary Indigenous magazine published right here in Winnipeg. The Winnipeg Indigenous Accord is a wonderful initiative developed right here in Winnipeg to help us all stay in good relationship with each other. I thank the board for the honor of representing our church at this historic event. It truly was an amazing day for all participants. Rebecca Chartrand, CEO of Indigenous Strategy Alliance, sums it up well. She says in Say magazine, "The Accord has become a beacon of hope and a model for other Canadian cities, showing how to maintain reconciliation and equity at the forefront of civic agendas." May that always be so. Our closing hymn is number 121, We'll Build the Land. Please join in singing in your own space, wherever you are.